So this is 2010. So going all the way back to kind of like how I got into that story. April of 2010 is when WikiLeaks released the video called Collateral Murder. And forgive me if I am messing this up because it's so long ago in, internet history.
I always say to people, just check this yourself, just some of the
right?
terms and stuff, but you'll have the general timeline, right?
Yeah. But this video showed a U.S. Apache helicopter firing on civilians and journalists, Reuters journalists.
Was this a Chelsea Manning?
Baghdad, yes.
It was.
Right. It was, and it turned out to be a Chelsea Manning leak. This was the first in the public. I mean, I remember seeing this in April of 2010 and just being kind of blown away. Like I had heard of WikiLeaks. I'd seen like a few leaked reports. I think that they had put out some Guantanamo manuals and things. And I was aware of Julian Assange vaguely, but then Collateral Murder, I think for everyone, was this moment when you just couldn't believe what you were seeing on the internet. And it was not just like the content of it, like this incredible video that was really, kind of horrific. You're seeing from the cockpit view, you're seeing like the Apache helicopter's own cockpit view of the helicopter firing on like a group of people on the street in Baghdad and killing them. And this proved that these Reuters journalists had been killed. And the U.S. military, I believe, had denied that up until that point. But it was also just like an amazing, I think this was on Twitter and it was just kind of like blowing up. And
yeah, I have it playing behind you right there on the TV. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And I was kind of just shocked by like not only the content of this, but the notion of how WikiLeaks had gotten it, which was not that they had like hacked in and taken this extremely classified video, but that they had just kind of opened up an anonymous, cryptographically protected Dropbox. That's what WikiLeaks was.
Can you explain to people what that means, like how that works?
And somebody had just handed them this incredible thing. I mean, as a journalist, it was like I'll be happy to get into that in a second. But it was like a new way, I thought, of obtaining like the holiest of holy kind of secret stuff. That's I think that was my initial thought, and I think it's proven to be at least part of the story of WikiLeaks. But yeah, so like WikiLeaks, I've always thought like what Julian Assange really saw that nobody else saw is that if you could use not just kind of like the promises of a journalist, but actual cryptographic technology, encryption, and like the kind of technical promises of anonymity to cut the forensic chain between a journalist and his or her sources, then you could do journalism in a new way. Like, if there was just like, if you create just like an inbox, but that inbox is created using cryptographic anonymity tools, namely Tor. Have you heard of Tor?
Tor is the VPN that was used on the Silk Road.
Right. I mean, a VPN is like kind of the simplest, like I would say like a VPN it is like a super lightweight and relatively like insecure version of Tor. It's kind of like what you use because Tor is actually very slow and impractical, I would say, to use in your daily web browsing. But so a VPN, like it encrypts your traffic, all of your traffic, your internet traffic, and typically people think about it as like your web traffic, but all of it, and it sends it through a server. That server strips off the encryption and then sends it on to its destination, and then like the same thing is happening the other direction. I mean, I'm sorry, excuse me if I'm butchering this, like anybody technical is listening, but Tor does that in a really impressive kind of like Rube Goldberg machine kind of way, where it actually wraps up all of the traffic in 3 layers of encryption. Tor used to stand for the onion router because it wraps data in layers like an onion. So there's 3 layers of encryption, and then that ball of data, you could say in this metaphor anyway, is like bounced to one server, a volunteer's computer somewhere in the world. That computer strips off 1 layer of encryption, sends it on to the next, that strips off another one, and then sends that on to a third, and then that and so there's absolutely...
It becomes untraceable.
Right. It's like, almost like the visualization you see in movies, where like we're trying to trace the call and you see it moving from one node to the next. That's truly how Tor works. And you can run Tor to just visit to like the most common use of Tor is the Tor browser, and you can just visit anywhere on the web and have be anonymous to that website. But there's also the dark web, as you're alluding to, which is a kind of colloquial term for what were once known as Tor hidden services. They've changed their names now to Onion services, I think. But these are websites that run on Tor. So to visit them, you have to be running Tor yourself. You can only visit them through the Tor browser. And they also run on Tor so that nobody knows where the website is hosted. And everybody who's visiting the website is anonymous as well. Nobody knows who the administrator of the website is. And that was how WikiLeaks created its the WikiLeaks submission system ran as a Tor hidden service.
Always.
From the beginning, at least I think, from 2007 to 2010 or so, I think it had a long outage at a certain point when, I don't know, WikiLeaks has gone through so many crazy phases and faced a lot of, attacks and challenges. And of course, Assange is now facing prosecution. So, a different, but that was the original conception of WikiLeaks as I understood it. And that's how it worked for years. I think it turns out that Assange was also doing some just very, personal on the ground. I don't know all of his sources. I mean, nobody ever will, but he probably wasn't getting everything through those Tor hidden service. But I think a lot of the incredibly, juicy, I guess you could say, secret, reams and reams of classified materials he did get through the WikiLeaks submission system. And that to me seemed like a huge innovation. And so the book that I wrote was really about, it was like trying to use the WikiLeaks and the story of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange to tell a larger story of the invention of cryptographic anonymity, like the invention of Tor, and which came out of this culture, this movement called the CypherPunks.
And that was in the 90s, right? That's when that was born?
Right. The CypherPunks first came about in the 90s. But I would say that the cypherpunk movement, it's sort of been, in some ways, it's just kind of been like enveloped into internet culture. A lot of tools that were invented by the cypherpunks, like VPNs, I mean, are now just something that everybody or, millions and millions of people use. I don't think most people, when they think of the dark web, like a lot of people have heard of the dark web, they probably don't think about the fact that came out of this cypherpunk movement from the 1990s.
Who were those guys?
Yeah, well, wow, I'm really like digging into my own archives here, like mentally. But the cypherpunks were founded by, I would say that maybe like the most interesting of the founders was a guy named Tim May. He was Timothy May. He was an Intel engineer really early on and made a lot of money working at Intel, retired extremely, really early, I think in his early 40s, and just then spent the rest of his life. He passed away just a few years ago.
3 years ago, it looks like 3.5 years ago.
Kind of just dreaming. I would say he was a extreme libertarian, and he spent his life kind of dreaming. First, actually, he wanted to be a science fiction author. Then I think he kind of saw that he could just implement some of these ideas himself, almost like a sort of modern day philosopher or something. Like but his idea was that that encryption would unlock a new era of individual control and liberty, taking power away from the state and giving it to individuals. And he both kind of observed that, like, in a sort of Marxist way, and then also wanted to make it happen in a kind of Lenin way. He thought this was a good thing. He coined this term crypto anarchy and wrote the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto, which was a very influential thing that spread, at least first among the cypherpunks, and kind of became one of their, I don't know, like their sort of calls to arms.
Got it.
Yeah. But he foresaw a world where this kind of encryption would not just keep secrets, but it could be used to do things anonymously on the internet in a way that had never been possible in sort of human interaction before. And that would include sharing secrets, like even classified secrets, corporate IP that's not supposed to leak. He created this kind of thought experiment called Blacknet, where people would go onto this marketplace, a kind of like anonymous, cryptographically protected eBay for ideas, and you could like go on there and sell all of your company's secrets to the highest bidder. That kind of thing. This was this was like, I forget what year, but this was mid-90s, and he was really envisioning a kind of for-profit WikiLeaks.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.